I am pleased to introduce Dr. Marcus Rogers. Dr. Rogers is a professor and department head in computer and information technology at Purdue University. He is a forensic research psychologist, university faculty scholar, fellow of the Center for Education and Research in Information Assurance and Security, or CERIAS, and fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. Dr. Rogers is also the co-editor of the IEEE Privacy and Security Cybercrime Department. His areas of research and interest cover the behavioral aspects of the deviant use of technology, cybercriminal behavior analysis, and understanding cyber terrorism. Today, he will present a talk titled, The Rise of the Autonomous Cybercriminal. Please silence your electronic devices, but don't put them away. We want to see you tweeting the hashtag Dawn or Doom. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Marcus Rogers.
Thank you. Let me just move this down a bit. My voice tends to carry quite well, so I usually don't wear a mic, as you can tell. We still good? All right. There? Okay, even better. Well, thank you for joining me. I thought this topic was something that would be a lot of fun to talk about. When I was putting this together, I was looking at this and thinking, this sounds like one of those bad B-rated science fiction movies, right? You know, the attack of the 90-foot woman and all these things. And it really kind of, at the same time, is funny, but it should be very scary. Because although this sounds like a bad B movie, it's not that far from reality. At least that's what I'm going to posit. So let's look at things. We talk about cybercrime. What comes to mind? I say cybercrime. What do you think of? Hackers. What else do you think of? There you go. Computer criminals, hackers. We think of the stereotypical, the stuff we see in the media, right? The young man in the basement with the purple hair, drinking the Mountain Dew and staying up to all hours of the morning hacking things. We think of the stereotypes we have from the movies. There's that one TV series right now, Mr. Robot, things like that, right? So we have a really kind of, I think, stilted view of what cybercrime is and who's responsible for it. What we do know is that it's happening. Cybercrime is a reality. Just look at the headlines. You can't pick up the paper without seeing something like this. Everybody's getting hacked. Everybody's data is being stolen. Everybody's personal data, everybody's health data. Now they figure there's something in the range of I don't know how many millions of fingerprints. I'm talking fingerprints. Fingerprint data that was stolen from the federal government is out there now. So about 35 million have been released. So this is not something that is new. We've been dealing with this for a few years now. And it's also something that is in the headlines all the time. And it doesn't seem that any of us is immune from this, whether you're a large corporation, a small individual, somebody that doesn't even do any online banking, you still have to be worried about being a victim. I was giving a talk a couple of weeks ago at a bankers association, and one of the individuals was a client at one of the banks, and they said, well, I don't do any online banking, why should I care? And I said, well, I guarantee your information is out there somewhere, whether you put it out there or not. That's just the reality. They talk about carbon footprints. We talk about global warming. Have you ever thought about what your digital footprint's like? It's huge. Almost everything about you is stored somewhere. Social media stores what you do. Information related to insurance, buying habits, credit card numbers, social security numbers. All that information is out there, and all that information are targets, rewards that these cyber criminals want to go after. What we don't know, though, is how big of a problem is it? We know it's a problem, but we don't exactly know what dollar figure to put around it. The figures go anywhere from 300 million to 500 million to 1 billion. I was just reading something today from the UK, and they said it's 300 billion now. So that's a pretty wide range, from 300 million to 300 billion. All we do know is it's a big problem. What we also know, we'll turn this microphone off here. This one turn off? What we do know is that it is a problem that's increasing. So year over year, we're not quite sure what the exact numbers are, but it's not going down. And that makes sense if you think about it. We're doing more and more stuff online. We do banking online now. We've got, our calendars are online. We carry computers on our hips now. Who here does not have a phone on them right now? All right, you're the only one. He gets the prize. But you've got a computer. You've got a device with personal information. You have a device that somebody could hack into. I'll have to stand back over here. Somebody could hack into and get information and commit a computer crime. So while we don't know exactly the numbers behind it, we know that it is a big problem, and it's not going to go away. In fact, the latest statistics, if we can believe any stats, indicate that the health industry and the health insurance industry is growing at a rate of about 300% about becoming a victim of cybercrime. So it's going up and up. Well, if we don't know exactly how big of a problem it is, what do we know about those people that are committing the cybercrimes? We've got to know something about them, right? Here's some Snickers. Anybody recognize that? Angelina Jolie. This was the hackers, right? This is one of the old movies. This is what we think of when we think of cybercriminals. This is what law enforcement thinks of. This is what we as security professionals think of. Cybercriminals, it's people. We've always argued that, yes, technology is being used, but technology is merely a tool, right? That technology is neither good nor bad, evil, immoral. It's just neutral. It's what you do with the technology that makes the difference. So it's really not technology that we've been studying up to now. It's been the people behind the technology. What motivates somebody to take a piece of software that could be used for good and commit evil with it? Go from the, go to the dark side of the force with technology, so to speak. Because technology really, like I said, it doesn't have any values. It's just a tool. And we know historically from criminology and from the study of crime for centuries that criminals are early adopters of all technologies. It helps with what they're called their criminal tradecraft. If you look at the fax machines, you look at the first telephones, you look at the first telegraphs, I guarantee you there was fraud happening with those, and there was crime happening with those. Same thing with technology. So we've really been focusing on the people, trying to understand what motivates them to do things, what motivates them to commit a computer crime. And we think we kind of have a pretty decent model. It has to do with motivations. And this is basic psychology, okay? We, as humans, don't do things randomly or just for the sake. We're usually motivated to do them for some reason. There's some drive, there's some reason we want to do something. So you look at what are some of the motivations that people commit cybercrimes for. Well, sometimes it's because personal gain, money. Same reason people rob banks. It's for the money. You've got, I always love this term. One day I'm actually going to find a gruntled person, because apparently there's a lot of disgruntled people. So if anybody is gruntled in the room, I'd like to meet with you, because that would make a really good paper. You might have ideology. Here you have the hacktivists. And you could possibly start putting in some of the groups that are borderline on kind of the cyber terrorism scale. You've got organizational gain. You now have, and this is something that we could add to this, you now have basically it's your job. If we believe the headlines, we have nation states and we have people who work for nation states, and it's their 9-to-5 job to go in the morning and hack other countries. What a cool job. I think some of my students are looking for that, but we haven't seen the recruiter come out for that one yet. So there's lots of different reasons. And again, this is no different than the motivations for traditional criminal behavior. Nothing has changed. Just because we put technology in the mix, we've really thought that, okay, we can kind of understand this. And we've done a pretty good job of trying to not just understand what has happened historically, but we're trying to predict what's going to come down the pipe. We like to say in this area that we're great at predicting history. We can predict history really well. And what I mean by that is every time something happens, we're like, yeah, we saw that. We knew that was going to happen. You see that when somebody commits a horrendous crime and they interview the neighbors, right? The neighbors already knew, I knew he was going to do that. I knew he was crazy. I knew they were going to. Well, then why didn't we do anything if we knew? So we like to predict history. A lot of security controls, a lot of the stuff we do in information security protect us from things that happened 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago. They're not protecting us from things that are going to happen tomorrow or in a half hour from now, zero-day exploits. So we're really trying to look at predictive. Can we predict what these cyber criminals are going to do next? Get ahead of that curve. And that sounds pretty interesting. And it's kind of the holy grail. It's got a really cool name around it. You've got to have cool names in this stuff, right? And it's basically, it's referred to as cyber adversarial predictive modeling. It's when you're applying for grants, you have to have really long names that sound real cool. That gets their attention. But it's really looking at how do we take historical behavior, how do we take our understanding of human behavior and criminology and sociology and technology and predict what people are going to do. And this is all well and good. Well, I'm going to throw something into the mix. What happens when this, not if, what happens when this all changes? We've been dealing with people. We're trying to understand people. The argument has been, it's not that much different because the technology is just an add-on. It's an addition to the crime. What happens when it's no longer the addition? What happens, like my friend Bender here, what happens if this is now the cyber criminal? What happens when technology totally betrays us and technology becomes no longer neutral? Okay, this sounds really out there, but is it? Is this really the stuff of sci-fi? If you look at what we're doing on the defensive side, we're trying to design systems, artificial intelligence systems, machine learning systems. We're trying to create systems to assist the people that are investigating the crimes catch the people that are committing them. But those same type of systems, that same type of technology, that same artificial intelligence can be used against us, just like any other tool. And the real fear is, what if it becomes autonomous? It no longer listens to its human overlords and decides that, no, it wants to make decisions on its own. Again, this sounds like something out of a movie. I love it because this is, I think they had like all the Terminator movies were on this weekend, I think. So that got me all motivated to put some real cool things in here. But what do we do with this? So I started doing some research going, yeah, there's got to be some studies. Somebody has to be looking at this. And right now there's almost no published studies looking at what if technology goes rogue? What happens? There's a few things in the ethics area, which I'll get to in a minute, but from the actual machine learning and artificial intelligence, this is something that we haven't thought about this aspect of it. Yet, if you go back to some of the science fiction writers back to the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, they have been thinking about this. Isaac Asimov, the whole concept of robots, the whole concept of, we'll get to the, we might necessarily have to control or build in some kind of controls on robots so we can trust them. The whole idea that technology now is going to be faster and smarter than us. And if you look at how we're building AI and machine learning, we're modeling after what? The human mind, right? I'm going to argue that's not necessarily a good model. Think about it, okay? One of my areas is forensic psychology. One of the areas in forensic psychology is abnormal psychology. So we're creating something that's going to be bigger, better, faster, stronger on a model we know has abnormalities, pathologies, all the weird things that can happen. And if it's going to be modeled on the way we work, it's going to have some of those same motivations. Is it going to be motivated by greed? Is it going to want to be famous? Is it definitely is going to have some basic needs? It's going to want to stay alive, right? It's going to want to feed itself. It's going to want to keep itself going. And for most of these systems, energy would be what keeps it alive. So you can get into examples of where we can start looking at technology using the mind as the model. It's not unheard of, or it's not unthinkable that we're going to have the same type of quirks. And in fact, in a lot of the Isaac Asimov books, psychologists now are psychologists for robots because they have to make sure the robots aren't going insane. So if you go look at the research on this, nobody's talking about it from that side of the house. They're looking at it from, it's going to protect us, it's going to be good, and honestly, it'll never go bad and become Skynet and take over the world. Some of the folks in the philosophy and ethics are going, but what if it does? Or what do we do when it does? And there actually are some scary little examples that, given a little bit of time and effort, could end up becoming these autonomous cyber criminals. There is a project that's been going on for a long time. It's called Metasploit. I won't get into the details, but it's grown from a very small kind of a cottage little idea to a very large project where people are building these expert systems. And these expert systems are doing security. A lot of these expert systems and a lot of these components for it are designed to attack. They have an anti-forensics component. They have a malware component. They have an active remote access takeover rat component to them. And these things are building. And they're building these things, and they're making them smarter, they're making them more efficient, and they're bringing in the concepts of, at this point, it would be pretty much weak AI, but they're talking about machine learning and how does it basically start training itself to do these things. So we're already seeing, I think, the kind of the precursors to some of this. So let's pretend then that it does happen. What do we do? Well, what do we do with somebody that commits a cybercrime right now? What do we do? Well, we investigate them, we catch them, right? What happens when we catch them? Prosecute them. Okay, we put them in jail, right? Kind of a good model for humans. What do we do with these autonomous systems? We hire them, yeah. Like we do the hackers, right? And this sounds really bizarre, but this is what some of the thinking is going. What do we do? Who's responsible? If you created that autonomous system, you're its parent, and it goes out and commits a crime, are you responsible for it? Parent or owner or creator? Good question. Depends. Right. So are you responsible for what happens to it? Or it's how it's used?
A lot of my customers will require me to carry insurance that indemnifies them if it fails.
Right. So you build a self-aware autonomous system. It goes out and it decides that it no longer wants to reach end of life.
You use the word "it decides" as though that were some kind of off in the cloud kind of thing. But computer programs don't do anything that they're not programmed to do.
Right now, autonomous self-aware systems will. Okay, and that's not science fiction. They're coming.
Well, we are already writing programs that can reprogram themselves.
Right now, and these we're talking about strong AI here. We're talking about where it actually is self-learning.
Right, and that's one of the questions that needs to be answered. Is that really possible?
It depends on who you talk to. For the most part, nobody said it's impossible. They just have pushed up and down the date when they think strong AI will actually. It's gone from like 2027 down to 2020 and then back up to 2030. And
I'll let you make the case. I'd like to hear the case.
my talk isn't about the case. My talk is if it does happen, what do we do? Okay, because we have to start thinking, because even if it's a 50-50 chance, okay, I think it will happen, but even if you say it's 50-50, we better have something in place. It's good to think about this. It's a good exercise to think about it. Okay? Because I think some of these things that we talk about here, we can relate to what we're dealing with the human issue and the human problem right now. So what do we do? Who is responsible? What ethics are we going to build Are we going to build prisons? So we'll have to have robot guards and robot police to go catch robot cyber criminals that are committing these offenses. So yes.
Well, when you say the program commits crime, you're giving it human rights. If I would bite someone to draw blood, that would be a crime. So a mosquito does it. It's not a crime. I still try to kill the mosquito.
Okay. And you know, that's an ethical question and philosophical question they're dealing with.
You don't punish a mosquito.
Right, and that is one of the arguments. Who do you punish? Because we're going to have to punish. I tell you right now, we're going to have to punish somebody. We love to punish. We've got to punish somebody. If somebody breaks into a bank and steals the money, somebody's going to get punished. That's the model. Okay, it's a punitive model. That's what we have to do. So, who do we punish? Do we punish them, or is it just, okay? What do we do when we catch them? Do we shut them down? Is that the death sentence? Would that be the death sentence if they're sentient, if they're alive? Slap on the wrist, yeah.
Have to develop like a whole new system of weapons to
And maybe a whole new systems of laws too.
come up with new defenses that
Oh yeah, this really starts.
black out the sky type thing.
This really starts spinning up really quick. And one of the questions that was asked when I was talking about this is, well, even if it's not, they don't go rogue and they don't pretend that they're not a psychopath computer doing anything. What type of crime could an autonomous system do and justify doing if it was illogical? Okay, if it was basically looked at, I don't want to do things that are bad. Think about self-preservation. Okay, you have the system, it's growing, it's getting bigger, it's aware that it's growing, it's getting bigger, it needs more energy, it can't get any more energy, without getting more energy it can't grow. So, decides maybe it will borrow some energy from over here. Needs to grab this energy, turn this energy off. Or, in the case where somebody decides it's end of life, I'm going to shut it down. Don't want to use it anymore. It decides it doesn't want to do that. So the same type of justification processes that could happen with us could start happening with these autonomous systems. And the big problem is, like you just said, we don't know, we haven't thought about this from a criminology perspective, from a legal perspective, from a philosophical perspective, even from a technology perspective. Because if these systems grow out of the systems that we're currently using to help us catch the people, and they are bigger, stronger, faster, more capable of doing things, how do we investigate it? How do we catch them? How do we deal with them? Well, that's what Bender would like you to do. But it really is, like I said, it's more than just a thought experiment. Because if you look at how criminal behavior and how technology and how this thing is starting to ramp up, it really is not that far-fetched. A lot of the discussion on whether something will become autonomous or will become self-aware, it's debatable how soon that would happen. But even if it doesn't, even if it's just expert systems, even if it's just systems like this Metasploit that allows somebody with absolutely no skills, no programming experience, to do what's called a point-and-click attack and be able to take down the New York Stock Exchange, we still have technology that we're having to deal with. Now we have the person part of it that we have to deal with, but we're starting to introduce another component, and that is the technology component. One of the arguments that people have used in the past related to the code is that I wrote the code, I put it out there, somebody else used it, and they did something bad with it. It's not my fault. I put it out there. Could that argument be used for, I created this initial program, it went out and programmed something else, it then programmed something else, and at the end of all this evolution of programming, it became this thing that I didn't design it to do, and it went and did something bad, and what do we do? And I can guarantee you that It's not just researchers thinking of this stuff. If we really believe that we have nation states doing this, the whole weaponization of cyberspace makes this a really interesting topic to discuss. If you look at, even within the United States itself, we're starting to move away from a lot of defensive research to more offensive research. We're moving away from cybersecurity and information security to something called cyber operations. And cyber operations is not about necessarily just defending your systems. It's about attacking and being offensive. Wow. An autonomous cyber criminal system that you could let loose in another country, that'd be a pretty cool weapon. It would cause a lot of damage, potentially. And attribution becomes an issue. Because like I said, at the end of the day, we really live in a legal model of we have to have, somebody has to be guilty, somebody has to go to jail, be punished, be fined, do something. And we don't know how to extend that. We don't know how to bring that forward. So while we've been spending a lot of our time right now, at least in the space that I live, thinking, well, you don't have to worry about technology, really. We just have to worry about people. People are really the problem. We need to step back and go, oh, yeah, technology is kind of in there as well. Maybe technology will stop just being a tool and be something hybrid, be something more of akin to a combination of the person and the tool or the technology itself. There was Johnny Depp had a movie out, wasn't it? I don't think it was seen by a lot of people, but a year ago, Transcendence. Okay, that kind of makes you think a little bit, right? That's kind of the hybrid type of approach to this. So like I said, there's lots of speculation, and right now, thank goodness, it seems to be more of a thought experiment than anything else, but it's something that I think we have to start really looking at. In cybercrime research, in information security, in cybersecurity, when we're talking about technology, we're always behind the curve. We're always playing catch up. So we have to start having a little bit more of these, I think, these novel ideas and start thinking about what could possibly happen. Not necessarily will happen, but strong possibility that it could happen. I always get a kick out of Asimov because he obviously thought about this kind of stuff too. And the 3 laws of robotics. So maybe we need to start building this in. Maybe if you're writing computer code right now and you're designing some of these soon-to-be self-autonomous systems, you need to be writing these 3 laws of robotics into it. I always get a kick out of the date on this. So if you're familiar with any of the Isaac Asimov books, you'll recognize what that is. And that was really the science fiction writer's way of trying to wrap their head around, how do we stop technology from hurting us, from harming us, from doing things it shouldn't. So I'm sure there's probably, I wanted to leave quite a bit of time for a discussion. So realistically, like I said, this is going to happen, and we have technology right now that is actually doing this. We have the precursors. We have the potential to see the starts of this happening. It depends upon a lot of different things and how things come together. But if we really do end up with strong AI, if we do really end up with self-aware autonomous systems based on a flawed model, then we're going to be dealing with this because we're dealing it with us. And if we're the model for that, we're going to bake this into the system. So, keep calm and obey the 3 laws. So, discussion, questions. Yes? I'll throw it at you, but I'd probably hit you in the head. Should be on.
So if you're considering AI to work independently, couldn't you just like EMP it? Like if a program's gone rogue and it's working independently with no humans attached, you stop supplying electricity.
Okay.
EMPs.
Right, you stop, okay, so you basically you nuke it with something, right? You bomb it or you do like electromagnetic pulse to it? Okay.
which wouldn't affect the humans.
Okay. And what would that do? That'd be a punishment, right?
That would kill the system. That's only in the extreme situation when it goes rogue.
Okay.
When it's independent and no one's behind the AI attack.
Okay.
That's
What if it's like Johnny Depp and it's combination of both of them?
But then there is someone to blame. Then of course it's the people who are responsible for working with them.
That could happen, yeah. But it would be pretty drastic to get to that point, and up to the point where you decided you would have to do that, there's probably a lot of damage done, though, right? That
Yes.
system could be doing a lot of, or that thing could be doing a lot of cybercrimes. Could have a run on the stock market. It could basically create multi-billion-dollar corporations and things,
But the thing is, if we're going up against a program which is just a program and not a robot,
right?
there's no other physical way to kill it other than killing the network all over the place, because it can just keep spreading.
Okay, and therein lies the rub, they would say. If it's already in a hyper-distributed system, I don't know, like the internet,
Yeah.
how do you know it hasn't duplicated, replicated, and stored itself and backed itself up in more than one place? You can't nuke the entire internet. Well, you could, because that's what they did in this movie.
We wouldn't have a choice.
That'd be kind of the nuclear literally the nuclear option, right?
Or we'd have to get another program to kill this.
And then it starts doing, and then that program. There actually was a researcher that about 10 years ago really started looking at, you know what, almost every piece of malware in the world that's ever been released is out there somewhere in some system on the internet that's probably connected. What if, at some point in time, something decided to go and start pulling all these little pieces together, and this stuff now built up into something that it was never designed to do, because there's pieces of this. It's like genetic code. It's out there. Okay? Almost all the attacks that have happened, I guarantee you there's a router, there's a switch, there's a computer, there's a laptop, there's a hard drive that's got some of these pieces on it. That is really getting to be science fiction. To me, that's like, wow, that you can blow your mind on that. But it's kind of a cool idea.
Things are designed to work based on flaws in the system, and so as soon as the patch is released, those little bits and pieces aren't going to do anything.
Oh yeah, because attacks that were good 5 years ago don't work today, right?
Yeah, like a zero-day attack
No.
on Windows 95 isn't going to do anything.
Part of the biggest problem we have right now is most systems right now can't protect themselves from things that came out 3 years ago. Okay, patching and patch management and dealing with flaws. I don't know how many times you see where some system has been attacked because the upgrade has opened up a hole for an attack that was 3 years ago. So we don't have our heads wrapped around patch management. If we did, we wouldn't be having viruses. And last time I checked, viruses are the 27th or 28th year anniversary of viruses. So that argument's got a couple holes in it.
And cause problems.
great
Why do you have
life,
to be self-aware? And mosquitoes aren't self-aware as far as I know, but they survive and multiply and
Yeah,
feed.
and one of the arguments is that we'll never get the strong AI. It'll just be like a very smart program. It's
So right, so someone designs a program deliberately to maybe go out, maybe hold computers for ransom and charge some
Yeah, and
bitcoins, but then you never cash the bitcoins. Don't go anywhere. They're just an annoyance.
And and you know what? That's happening right now. We're dealing with that right now. Quite often, if we look at the statistics, one of the reasons why we know we can't trust it, well, we think we can't trust the statistics, is because we know a large majority of the stuff's undetected. That these aren't accurate. This is only the stuff we kind of think we know about and the stuff that people are willing to report. So, yeah, if it's no different than it is today, then I think we kind of have a little bit of an idea of how to deal with it. We go after the person, right? Or if it doesn't do anything bad, it's just ignorance and nuisance, and it's we just deal with it and we pay another $100 for the next upgrade to the antivirus software.
Well, but you could sever the program from the person. He put it out there, and it's charging his bitcoins, but it's not coming back to the person.
No, it's going to the next guy who hacked it.
They just never, who knows where Bitcoins go when you send them. It goes into, and we know it.
Or it could be going into the account of that next self-autonomous system that's set up the account, just waiting to do that.
If it was aware. But I guess my point is, it doesn't have to be aware, does it? There's a much.
Oh yeah. And there's different levels. Oh, you're right. Yeah, there's extremes. There's this. We're talking to the extreme end being the self-aware autonomous, but there's everything from expert systems to from scripts to expert systems to if we ever get to strong AI. It doesn't have to be at that end to still be an issue, to still be a problem. My argument is we're kind of still thinking about the lower end, but we went from it's all technology to no, it's all people to, well, maybe it's technology and people, and maybe we'll get back to technology again. But we have to understand that as we're doing some really cool things in certain areas, you look at things like Cortana and Siri. Some of those are coming out of research that are dealing with artificial intelligence and these assistants, these smart assistants. So we're already seeing research in that area actually already being and impacting your daily lives. We're using that stuff. Okay, being able to, the Google Now, being able to ask a question, and it's basically doing natural language and figuring out, being able to type a question in where you don't have to actually, you can say, I have a meeting next Tuesday at 3 p.m. and it figures out the next Tuesday at 3 p.m. is you, and it's actually on this date and it's in this time. Look, this stuff is the precursors of the stuff are already here. So we may not ever get to this huge part of it, but we're seeing other parts of what could be turned into this already exist in society, and we're using it, and it's not going to go backwards. We're actually looking. There's a real positive to having intelligent systems in medicine, in healthcare, in prediction, in weather forecasting. They're not necessarily a bad thing, but they could always. It could be at some point, because not everybody's bad, but yet we have some bad people, right? Yes.
Okay, so philosophically, we kind of argue whether or not we as humans have free will, or if there's consciously decisions made before we're even aware of them. And so neuroscientists have been trying to pinpoint that part of our brain that is the free will moment or center. So are you then suggesting that these machines are going to have that free will and can have?
I don't know. No idea. The question is not so much from my stance. Somebody's going to have to think about that. It's going to be people much smarter than me.
Because then it kind of leads into the creator and parent, right? So if you're a parent and your child is under the age of 18 and does something, well then yeah, there might be neglect or something that you can get in trouble for. But once the kid is out of the house, whatever it does, I mean, you as a parent, you're just kind of like, what?
Yeah, it could be he's no longer a juvenile. You're not responsible for it. So if Yeah, if little Billy the computer goes rogue and he's no longer 18, or he's over 18, it's not my problem.
Right.
I don't know. That's for the course to look at.
Be interesting.
It would be very interesting. What I'm really interested from this is on the point, and I think you started looking at, is how do we defend ourselves against these things? It's not so much what we do with them legally. I'm really interested in, from an investigative perspective, how would we catch these things? How would we monitor if well, you have self-mutating. You have what? You have. I'm trying to think of the term they use for some of the newest malware coming out there. Okay, it's actually mutating. It can actually detect when it is actually in one environment versus the other. When it's being investigated, when it's being actually looked at and reverse engineered one way, and it gives different behaviors based on the inputs coming into it. It mutates and hides itself and does different things given different contexts and different environments. We're having a hard enough time trying to figure out how we deal with that. If we get anywhere close to that spectrum, wow, we have to be a lot more intelligent and a lot smarter to start investigating or even noticing these things are going to happen. Yes.
It could manipulate our perception. It could manipulate an intelligent system capable of, let's just say, Google's reach, could ultimately manipulate data and perception of us cows. I mean, we might, if if that point ever comes, we may never be able to undo that.
Yeah. And like I said, there's lots of work for legal scholars, for philosophers, for judges, for lawyers. I'm going to be happy just trying to figure out from an investigator standpoint how I would even detect and look at this stuff. You know, the folks that are building the AI, they have to start looking at some of these bigger problems, but they're going to deal with those. I'm going to be happy just to try and look at that little piece, and I think that's going to keep me busy for a long time.
Okay, let me reground myself. We're talking about cyber criminals and the rise. Your final statement of keep calm and obey the 3 laws, but yet our cyber criminals are not.
Well, we hope they will, because we're going to bake that into it.
My question being, is that actually possible? Because since the cyber criminals are already breaking all the laws that are already established, are they going to follow that? Second of all, if they don't, are we making parameters to kind of, take care of that if it's not being followed?
That's a good question. And hopefully the folks that are doing the AI part of this and are thinking about those things, and from what I've read, they are. This is, the philosophical discussions are part of this whole thing. Like I said, the science fiction writers have been thinking about it from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, so it's not a new concept. But like I said, there's 2 sides to this. That one is it has to be baked into that, but then it's also then what do we do with it from a societal standpoint? What do we do? Who do we hold responsible? Do we turn them off? Do we nuclearize them? Do we just pull the plug? What do we do? Do we go after the company that originally created? Do we go after the patent? Or, like you said, do companies now and creators have to be indemnified against it? Do they have to now have, potential cyber criminal behavior of their tool insurance and liability waivers? There's a lot of things that interact with this. It's fun to sit here and say, what if? It's hard to try to determine what do we do about it now. So I'm happy to just stand here and throw rocks and say, what if? Because I'm hoping people will, we start asking what if, people will start going, oh, well, maybe about this. Yes?
Well, there are systems you can turn off, and there are systems that you can't turn off. And the problem, your extreme case, if we're talking about, for example, the electronic grid right now is most of it is controlled through software.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, you don't want to turn off the electricity to your hospital or to your, to your police station, that sort of thing. But I still say that you have to get through the issue of strong AI, and you have to answer the question: what does it really mean for a machine to be self-aware?
Agreed.
I think that's maybe
Yep.
the interesting question.
Yeah.
What really is it to say a machine is self-aware? What does it even mean for a human being to be self-aware?
Right.
And once you get through that wall, then these other questions start to take on a little more weight.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the fundamental questions, because if you look at how we supposedly have crafted our society and our legal justice system and our codes and stuff, it has to do with that whole concept of self-aware and sentient, we know who we are. I don't know how we're going to do that when we start talking about it, because we still argue about whether we are self-aware or sentient.
Well, certainly Kurzweil has probably done as much research in this area to try and answer this question, or at least to postulate what goes
Right.
goes beyond. But even his answers to self or computer
Right.
awareness are really not very satisfying. They're not very
Right.
not very compelling.
You're right. So we have a lot of work to do. And hopefully, and like I said, it seems odd to be talking about this from the perspective of, well, we should only focus on the humans, and that's really been my blind spot in dealing with this, is simply focusing on it. Now the realization is, yeah, there's this synergy. There's 2 sides to this we still have to worry about. And we have some fundamental questions to answer before we're ever going to be able to even tackle some of the bigger problems. Yes?
Let's say that computers actually are self-aware of its thoughts.
what if they're not doing it out of malintent, but they're actually doing it on accident?
Errors and omissions, right? I don't know. and that could, if you look at the world of cybersecurity and information assurance and business loss, a large percentage of, let's say we believe it's $300 billion, or we say that the company has been damaged. Quite a bit of the damage in a lot of cases is errors and omissions. Okay, oops, put the wrong patch. I've actually seen a company go offline for a substantial amount of time because somebody accidentally kicked the plug out in a server room. Are you going to charge that person? Is that a crime? Is that a criminal intent? Yeah. These are, like I said, I don't have the answers to this stuff. I'm just putting it out there and hopefully start thinking about these type of questions, because I think, well, hopefully your generation is going to be the one that comes up with these answers. We'll cause the problems and you guys can go fix it all for us.
So one of the things that's classically discussed is the paperclip maximizer. You have an AI that its job is to make paperclips, and it instead decides to make itself as smart as it can to make more paperclips, and eventually the entire universe becomes paperclips. I think that that's more likely than an intentional crime by an artificial intelligence, and that the way we prevent this is that our systems recognize and approve acceptable behaviors. So if we start with the present with email botnets, we could create a peer-to-peer system where you cannot send an email to more than 2 people, and if you want to send an email to
I'd
1,000
love
or a
that,
billion
because then I
people-
would have any email to answer during the day.
But if you want to do something like send an email to 1 billion people, you have to send it to 2 people and request that they send it to 2 people and request that they send it to 2 people, and each person decides whether they want to do that or not.
And the companies that make $1 billion a year are going to agree to this. Companies, there are legitimate companies that are making a lot of money. MailChimp. Okay.
I'd also use insecure communications like Facebook and texting to some degree. And I use secure communications for things where I can't trust.
Right. And it's interesting how a lot of these things look really good on paper, but then when you actually look at the economics and the scalability, and for the most part, we are never going to get away from the fact that everybody wants the internet to be convenient and technology is going to be convenient. Convenience is always going to win out over security and over privacy and over trust. It's just, that's the way it works. So there are some, I'm not arguing that there are some, I guess, theoretical ways of doing it. But even, and again, I'm not an expert on strong AI, but there has been some things positive that survival of these things could cause them to do things that they wouldn't consider to be a crime, but it could be because of the impact. Somebody dies because they've done something. Negligence. Negligent homicide. So yeah, it's just, like I said, it starts getting mind-warping and wrapping, but there really is, like I said, with technology and the fact that it's just scaled up so quick, and we're never going to put the genie back in the bottle, that it really, there's no real easy, not that there isn't any answers, there isn't really any easy answers. And unless we start thinking about this stuff and having these discussions and doing some of these exercises and thinking about this, we could end up completely blindsided someday. And that wouldn't be a good thing. Yes?
To the best of your knowledge, is the philosophy and technology in place to provide testable hypotheses and kind of take an analytical approach at trying to answer some of the things you've raised, specifically
Right.
how to defend against something, because so far security is reactionary rather than
From a
proactive.
I can't talk from an AI perspective or that. From a technical perspective, no, we're not even thinking about this yet. We're still thinking, we're going to use this technology to help us. It's going to, everything it does, we're going to make it smarter, faster, stronger. It's only going to be to help us. We don't have to worry about defending against it from a technical perspective, because it's kind of like, I'll use the example of quantum cryptography, right? Okay, how are you going to, so you've got the arms race. So you've got quantum crypto. What do you think the future hackers are going to use to break quantum crypto? The next, something above quantum crypto. So quantum crypto to go after. So it becomes kind of this thing. So technology kind of leapfrogging it. And I thought it was bizarre because I went out thinking, okay, there's going to be lots of articles on this. I can't be, we'll be, because I know we're using it for investigative purposes, some of the expert systems, I'll leave it at that. And yet there almost is nothing about, wow, how do we defend against what we're building? How would we test it? How would we even figure out whether something is on the cusp of doing this? And that's kind of scary. Because there are people a lot smarter than me thinking about how to use this stuff offensively.
There will be a thing that people claim is self-aware. And you will go to a conference with people who are arguing it's self-aware, maybe it itself will argue. This, speaking as a person who has 45 years of history in IT, this will happen.
Yeah.
It will happen soon, where soon is measured in tens of years.
Right. Because we're already seeing the starts of it.
It will happen in your lifetime. I won't happen in my lifetime, but it will happen in your lifetime. There is not a doubt in my mind. And we can wait and have that self-aware discussion when the grandson of Watson is in front of us.
Right.
Or we can think about it now.
Yeah, and I'd rather do the thinking about it now, and I'd rather do the thinking about it now with the really smart people that are doing AI, and the criminologists, and the sociologists, and the legal scholars, and the security people, and everybody in the same room talking about this stuff. Because, like you said, to me, I'm hopefully going to still be alive when to see it. Oh yeah, much. But I guarantee, I'm like you. I'm pretty sure that my kids, or at least my grandkids, are. This is going to be, man, were they ever dumb? What do they mean if? That was so silly. So yes.
I want to change the question
Sure.
to how can we defend ourselves, like humans from robots or like AI, to how can we defend them from us?
Ooh,
Because while we were like listening
Good-
to this,
good
I'm
question.
using all those cool examples from like movies and TV shows, and I am pretty sure that many of us have seen real humans or the original Swedish version of it. So in this one, robots are, yeah, for us, like they're helping us and they're doing cool stuff, but still there's this movement, we the people or real people, like whatever they call themselves, and they are not happy with that because there's unemployment due to, robots taking place in every kind of domain, and some of them are conscious and they're not really ready for that idea. So not just maybe
Oh, that's
defending
cool.
those conscious AIs, but also at the same time defending those who are supporting that idea from those who are not really happy with that idea. Like there's this whole chaos in the society between just two camps too.
Yeah, and that is a really cool area because it kind of flips it. So not just how do we protect ourselves from them, how do they protect themselves from us, and how do we coexist? And and that, like I said, that's something that I luckily don't have to think about right now. But yeah, this goes to the whole thing. We don't even know what questions to be asking right now.
Yeah, because it's very related to sociology and all this history. Because when
Anthropology, everything.
factory workers were introduced with machines for the first time, they were not happy with that, and they tried to demolish them instead
Sabotage.
of doing something against those who introduced them.
Throwing the shoe into the system.
Yeah, they were not happy with something taking over their own work. So
Right, right.
it's in the history.
Yep. But I think we've got time for about one more. Getting back to Scott's point, the reason I'm interested in it is because I want my students to be thinking about this. Because while I'm dealing with the human aspect of it right now and trying to deal with investigations and helping law enforcement and trying to figure out why people are doing it, I'm trying to prepare my students for what I think is going to be the next thing. They're going to have to start looking at the person-machine and probably at some point the machine itself plus the people separate from the people. And right now we don't even know what kind of questions are the real questions, are the good questions to be asking, and somebody has to do it. So hopefully it'll be the next generation of students. Get them excited about it. Yes? I'm giving him a sore arm. He's all over the place.
What if the only way to detect and possibly defend and catch against autonomous cyber criminals is actually more software?
And that could be it. So yeah, so now all of a sudden we have to trust the software. So we have good software and bad software, right?
What if it's also bad?
What if there is no good or bad? And this actually is, I won't get into that, but that came up in one of the discussions, and I'm like, holy cow, that's more than I care to cram into my head at one point. But yeah, and this whole concept, like I said, I'll wrap it up real quick. One of the, I guess, driving forces that got me thinking about this is exactly that. Just in my lifetime, I've seen such an advance. I've seen such an advance in technology, but I'm an ex-law enforcement officer. I was a detective in the computer crime unit, and just within my career in the computer crime, it went from, who cares what they were, it's the person, I'll go arrest the kid, or go basically talk to the mom or dad, all the way to, where's this stuff even coming from? Who's doing it? Who's controlling it? Do we even understand? And that next generation is going to have to be worrying about things like the machine, hybrid, the possible, maybe not self-aware, but maybe autonomous to some extent, doing some of these things. So it's kind of like, let's get ahead of that curve. Let's not wait for when it happens to go, oh yeah, we should have thought about that. Let's start giving that a kickstart and start thinking about it now. So I think we're out of time. Thank you very much.